perspective, maternity wise. Today, we're getting together because we want to talk about some of the pitfalls that happen when breastfeeding moms return to work. We today, this morning, had a question on our Facebook group, on our just our private Facebook group for just our students, um, saying something about baby, and I can't remember the exact scenario, but baby was not accepting a bottle and mom was going back to work. And I thought, oh, this is not something that is very, I don't think we really cover this too in depth when we're doing our training. And I know it's in the books that you have to read, but kind of some real life examples and some tips and tricks for this might be really helpful. So for one thing, um, if you've got a baby who is just outright refusing a bottle and mom's going back to work, one thing that I try to do to prevent that anyway is, you know, babies have like this oral preference thing that they do, right? From about 6 weeks until about 3 months, they start to develop this preference. And if you've hit the 3-month mark and you haven't done anything other than breastfeeding, you are more likely, not every baby's like this, right? But you're more likely to encounter a baby who's like, don't put anything else in my mouth. What are you trying to put in my mouth? No. And this is a reflex that they have that endures, right, into toddlerhood, actually, where if you put something in the front of their mouth, and we do talk about this in our classes, but if you put something in the front of their mouth, they have a tongue thrusting reflex. This is to keep them from choking. And so when you put a bottle in the front of their mouth and you're expecting them to, take it in the way they would take a breast, to them it's a foreign object and they're trying to keep themselves from choking on it. They don't realize it's a form of nourishment at first. When they're still very little, so after you've established a good breastfeeding relationship and baby's, latching well and baby's mouth shape has kind of solidified, so you're talking 2-3 weeks after the birth, this is when adding a pacifier or adding a bottle or something like that's a good idea, even if you just do it once a day, right? And so my recommendation, if you know you're going to go back to work at some point, make this part of your bedtime routine. Give baby like an extra little ounce after you've finished nursing for the day or nursing for the bedtime. Give baby maybe 1 ounce of pumped milk. You don't have to do formula. You don't have to do something, totally different. You can just use your own milk. Um, and put a tiny bit of coconut oil in there, just like a pea size. And the reason why I say that, there's a couple things. It's beneficial to get rid of yeast, right? It's also beneficial for any baby who tends to be constipated or gassy. Sometimes that'll help move things through a little smoother, and it adds a little bit of that slip to the intestines when it's coming through. The other thing is, um, milk that is higher in fat content actually helps baby sleep longer. So now you're talking about a baby right before bed, you're getting that little tiny bit of coconut oil. It helps them to sleep a little bit longer in that first sleep segment. Okay. Also, if you have a baby who you're trying to put weight on to help them sleep longer, this is one of those things can help put weight on. Now, the main reason when it comes to bottle aversion, the reason why I say add the coconut oil is because it gives a slightly different taste. And so for babies that are trying to figure out what is this, should I actually, let this in my mouth, the taste is intriguing. And so they're kind of like curious about the taste, right? And so they're more likely to take it on board and suck on it. So those would be the reasons why you might add a little bit of coconut oil in those early days bottles. So when I say early days, I'm talking 3-4 weeks old. Okay. If you haven't started introducing a bottle by like 2 months, you're going to see between 2 months and 3 months is usually when they start to have preferences like that, right? About what they want or don't want to accept for milk. So helping your clients to know that as you're working on breastfeeding readiness for them before the birth and then after the birth, if you know that they're going to be going back to work or they know they're going to be going back to work, you can talk them through this, that it's important, by a certain time period, that 6-week time period is usually kind of a good time because you can expect baby to sleep a lot better at this point. They're usually better eaters, they're usually better sleepers, they've put on a little bit of weight. And once you start offering that little bit of bottle, you're not offering it in place of a feeding, you're just offering it in addition to a feeding. They're a lot more likely, and especially if they're drowsy already, they're a lot more likely to take it. Then you're basically training them to accept a bottle, right? And you're only doing it once a day. They're only getting a tiny bit of milk, so it's not interrupting the breastfeeding relationship because you don't want to do that. You don't want to be giving a whole bottle and then mom's body's not getting that demand, right? You still want the mom-baby relationship to stay intact. The thing is, if you get to this 3-month point and baby has never had a bottle before, and suddenly mom's getting ready to go back to work, and I've seen this happen more than once, where mom's like, okay, well, I'm gonna pump milk and then I'm gonna leave, and then the baby's just gonna take a bottle, and I'll be at work all day, and the nanny's gonna feed the baby. Well, guess what actually happens? So mom's gone, baby's with a nanny who they're not necessarily super familiar with. And what do babies do when they're around people they're not familiar with? They go to sleep. They shut down. Yeah, Dion says, nope, don't work. It's not going to work. So baby takes a nap, takes a long nap, and then they wake up crying. They refuse the bottle sometimes. Sometimes they'll take it, but they'll still be like so worked up and so upset, and they're still like not eating the normal amount that they would eat over the course of the day because they're sleeping, because they're trying to shut everything out, waiting for mom to get back. So then mom gets home and baby's been stressed out all day, super hyperactive in their their cortisol's up and their adrenaline's up, and they're so worked up from the whole day. It's hard for them to settle back down for nighttime to actually sleep at night. So their night routine gets messed up for that reason. But then even worse, they're hungry. So then they nurse and they nurse and they nurse and they nurse and they want to nurse the whole night through. And now mom's been up all night with a nursing baby who's trying to make up for all the calories that they didn't get during the day. All because we didn't prep the baby for the bottle. So training grandmas, partners, nannies, childcare workers, whoever it is that's going to be taking care of your baby, you want to make sure that they understand baby needs to be eating at the same exact intervals that they would be if you were there with the breast, right? Because you don't want them to then go without and then keeping mom up all night. That's the nightmare that I've been called in for as the postpartum doula and the lactation support person. Come help me because now my baby's sleeping all night. Well, your baby's sleeping all night because they're eating all night because they're sleeping all day. And they're treating their nights as their days now because they don't want to live in a world without mom. So they just shut down and go to sleep. So here's the next thing that you can do. Let's say you're already here. Your client's calling you. She's getting no sleep. Her baby's awake all night. Her baby's wanting to, scream and fuss and reject the bottle all day long. And she's freaking out. What do I do? What do I do? So number one, she can be, pumping milk and adding that coconut oil to the bottle. But even better, have somebody else, whether it's the nanny stays late or partner does it or grandma does it or somebody else besides mom, introduce that bottle after baby gets a feeding, after baby's been breastfed and is satisfied. Then you sit down with the baby when baby's happy and full, and you put baby so that baby's facing out. Probably should have had a doll, but you put baby so baby's facing out. Baby's right here. Baby's looking out, not at mom. We don't see mom. Get rid of mom. Sorry. But put mom in the other room, right? So baby's not distracted. Turn on the television, something that's visually interesting for baby. This is not a long-term solution, right? But we're trying to do this as part of the transition to accepting the bottle. You don't want to put baby in front of a TV long-term, obviously. That's not what I'm advocating here, but I'm trying to give baby something to look at to kind of help distract them, to keep them chill while you're putting this bottle in their mouth. Okay. So baby's here, you're leaning back, and you're feeding bottle to baby here. And when you do it, we're not going to do, so this is the other thing. A lot of times parents, they're like so gentle and sweet, but they're like just putting the bottle to the baby's lips and expecting the baby to latch on like they do to the breast, right? But they're not going to do that. With a bottle, especially with a baby who's got that tongue thrusting reflex, they're just going to push it right back out. So you've got to actually push it into the baby's mouth. And with a breastfeeding baby, whatever bottle you're using, whatever nipple you're using, hopefully it looks like a regular nipple, but a lot of parents don't have that kind, right? A lot of parents have just that regular Gerber nipple. No matter what kind of nipple you use, making sure that it goes deep in the baby's mouth and that the lips are still flanged the way that they would be flanged over the breast. So you're simulating breastfeeding. You're not, baby's not sipping from a straw, right? You're putting the nipple deep in the baby's mouth, just like you would put the nipple of the mom deep in the baby's mouth, right? So you're going to do that with the bottle, and you have to sometimes push it in there, but you're going to put it in there at an angle, just like you would put the breast in at an angle, right? Toward the soft palate. You're going to do the same thing with the bottle. You're going to go up underneath that front gum line and far back as far as you can go, getting those baby's lips flanged. And so baby's here, you're doing that. Maybe there's a little coconut oil in there to make the taste different. Because sometimes baby like will taste the milk and be like, this is mom, but this is not the right mode of transport for this mom taste, right? So the other thing is, if it's got like a little bit of coconut oil in it, that taste makes them curious, but you want to make sure the warmth also is there. So oftentimes we don't warm the bottle enough, and babies will reject a cold bottle. Always. Formula, breast milk, you can make them get used to a cold bottle eventually, but that's really not good for our digestion anyway. So our digestion needs that warmth. And so baby's natural instinct is, if it's a cold liquid, that's not good for me. I'm not accepting that. Right. So you want to make sure it's warm. And when we're warming it, especially for these babies who are rejecting the bottle, make sure that it's slightly warmer than your skin. So, normally you would drop a little drop on your wrist. And if you don't feel anything, then it's probably the same temperature as your wrist, right? Which is great. But you want it just slightly warmer than that for these babies that want to refuse it, because actually the surface of your skin is less warm than the internal liquid that's coming out of you when you're breastfeeding. Does that make sense? Just by a few degrees, but the baby can tell a difference. So that's another thing you can do. Another technique that actually I had a friend of mine who's a pediatrician. I worked with this one baby, and she legit, we tried everything. We, tried, swaddling her and tried all these different things, tried feeding her while she was asleep. Nothing was working. And I asked, but this was like day 3 of her just outright refusing any food from a bottle. I tried syringes, which you can try that as well. She would refuse pacifiers. She refused anything near her mouth. And at this point, because the first day, I think anyway, in my mind, I think the first day was so traumatic for her that mom just left. Mom had never been away from her before, right? Mom just left and abandoned her, and she was, heartbroken. And then she's trying, you're trying to put these things in her mouth. I think she started to create like an oral aversion, like a psychological kind of oral aversion to anything other than mom. So by day 3, we're having a hard time, obviously, because she's still not eating. And now at this point, mom's up all night with baby. My friend who's a pediatrician said, at 3 months, because she was 3-month-old, she said at 3 months, it's not going to hurt anything for you to make her just a little tiny bit of rice cereal. And because it's a little bit thicker, that texture is going to, she's going to explore the texture in her mouth, right? And then while she's exploring the texture in her mouth, you could stick the bottle in her mouth. And it worked. And I used that on a couple of other babies too, and it worked so fast and so beautifully. So you put this just a little tiny bit of baby cereal in their mouth, and they're nap, nap, and then you pop the bottle in their mouth. And with this really, really, really stubborn, very strong-willed child, we could get her to drink an ounce. Now she was used to having like 5, 6 ounces at this point. She was a big eater at her regular meals, right? So at this point, we put a little, cereal in her mouth, gave her the bottle. She would drink it. She'd get about half, like she'd get about an ounce down her, and then she'd realize, "You tricked me. How dare you?" She would start crying all over again. So we calm her down, do this whole thing over again. She'd drink again, about an ounce. And by the time we got through that first bottle, she was like, "Okay, maybe." It took, I can't remember exactly, but I think it took like 2.5 feedings. Like, I think it was the middle of the 3rd feeding where she just like was okay with just finishing the bottle. But it was a whole, 3-day process of trying all the things. And I would say doing the baby cereal is the last, it's a last resort. So you really don't want to add other things to babies' nutritional intake that's really not necessary, because really that rice cereal is just carbs. It's going to turn straight to sugar in their gut, and you don't really want to be doing that on a regular basis. But if you're just giving them a little bit, just to be, giving them like an interesting change of texture, doing that for a few feedings isn't going to harm them. And what this mom started doing too at that point, so day 2 in the evening, she was actually able to give the baby a bottle, and she took it, but she only gave her the 1 ounce with the coconut oil in it. Um, Cheryl, it says you're in the waiting room, but I can see you. Oh, it's a different Cheryl. Never mind. It's Cheryl Askins. I was like, I think something's malfunctioning here. No, so she was actually able to give her the bottle on the evening or the bedtime of day 2 that happened. Um, Normally you're not going to see mom being able to give baby the bottle. Normally, if if you're starting it ahead of time, anybody can give the baby the bottle. But when you get to that, like, I'm on a strike now. And it's like the opposite of a nursing strike. You guys have heard of a nursing strike, right? Where baby's like, "That's it. I'm not taking the breast ever again. I just want the bottle." That happens too. But the the trickier one is when, or the more stressful, trauma causing one is when baby refuses any kind of bottles. So, like I said, you can do syringes. That takes a really long time, but you can do syringes. You can do spoons. You can try spoon feeding. Usually, by the time baby is 3 months old, they're taking at least 2 ounces at a feeding, and usually more than that. And so you're looking at, and it depends on if you've got a baby who was premature or had any kind of, you know, stuff going on at the birth. But typically, you're really going to need to feed out of a bottle at some point from there, because doing it by spoon or doing it by syringe or some other way is just not feasible as far as time goes, you know. So those are my suggestions. Let me look really quick at um I want to look really quick at the Facebook group and see if there was another question related to that or any comments on there. Just so I can make sure I've covered everything for you guys, and then please feel free to ask me questions. Um,
I have a question for you. I have a couple of families actually, a similar situation
uh-huh.
where the baby started drinking formula. Mom started supplementing from formula. Prior to that, she was drinking out of a bottle with no problem. Now she refuses to drink out of the bottle due to the trauma that was associated with the discomfort of of milk, since she has an allergy. Um, Basically, the doctor says that's what was causing the discomfort. what suggestions would you make for that scenario? She is 7 months now, so
Mhm.
she's older, but mom's um not able to do anything else. Mom doesn't go to work yet, so she's still around, but just is there a way to get through that of the situation?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, um, is there something in the formula that the baby is reactive? So she's only on formula, right? Or is she only on
No,
breast
so mom breastfeeds. So, but they
milk?
tried because her milk supply had dropped, they tried supplementing formula. Um, and I ever since then she will just not take a bottle anymore. When before she'd take breast milk in the bottle or whatever in the bottle.
Sure. So my thought is at 7 months, they make sippy cups that have like a silicone end, and it's not in the shape of a nipple. So
Mhm.
maybe she would take that. Um, I would even start with like water or something that's not mom's breast milk. So something that maybe she can take that's because at 7 months they're a little more open as far as what they can tolerate. Even if you did like, and I wouldn't suggest doing this all the time, but just to get the bottle reintroduced and get baby to like it, something sweet. So like maybe even 1 part apple juice, 2 parts water. And because that's a hydrating drink, or you could even do
Mhm.
an electrolyte drink that's low in sugar, like Element. You know what Element is?
No,
Um,
I don't.
so Element is like these packets, they're powder and it's electrolytes, but it's low sugar. It's actually
Mhm.
might even be no sugar. I think it's 0 sugar. It's got like monk fruit or something as a sweetener, but even just something simple would be, 1 part apple juice to 2 parts water, and you don't wanna give her, like, a full sippy cup of that, but, like, just a little, like, a couple ounces, um, and see if she'll take it with that because it's sweet, she might be interested, you know? Um, that might be an option, and then, I don't know, as far as, like, putting mom's milk in there, she might be like, "Wait a minute. This isn't my sweet drink. What?" But give it a try and see if she'll take because it's a different flavor, different taste, and because it's a different, mouth feel, if you're doing a sippy cup, that might be better. My other thought is if she could get even, like, because she might not know to suck on a sippy cup, and those, especially the ones with the softer ones, they're made for babies, and they're not gonna spill.
Mhm.
And you wouldn't want it to just be the kind that just, like, lets, a wild flow through, so maybe even finding.
Can I add something about the sippy cups?
Yes, yes.
So I just posted in the comments a link to, I don't know if anyone has heard of the Honey Bear cups, but I have also worked with children with special needs. But this cup, um, you can control, it's a straw cup, but you can squeeze it. So the liquid that's inside comes to the very end of the straw. And you should make sure the straw is not too long. You can actually cut it so it's only about 1/4 of an inch because we want to teach the skills for actually open cup drinking and not suckling going forward. But when you can teach a child to drink out of a straw, it's life changing. They can drink anything, and you'd be amazed at how young they can do that. So with this cup, you can squeeze it, the liquid gets to the end. Maybe it's something sweeter or maybe it's breast milk, but then as soon as they get it, they're like, "Ooh, it's there," and it's right there for them, and then they get that action and it becomes a lot easier for them. So I think with a baby that age, they may be able to take, that instead of a bottle when they need to.
I love that, I've never seen that. Whoever made that is obviously a
It's
mom.
fantastic. I know, I've even thought about whenever I buy honey like that, I'm like, I should just save this and get a silicone straw. I could make my own, but
Yeah.
for now they're on Amazon. You used to only be able to get them through Talk Tools and they were expensive, but they're fantastic. But like I said, don't have the straw too long. We don't want that suckle to continue, but make sure that it is long enough to reach the bottom.
But I love that those honey bears, they're a little stiffer, so it would be
Mhm.
it's not like the kid can just juice box it,
No, they can't. Yeah, it's
would
for
be the
training
whole.
purposes. Yeah,
I love that, that's
yeah,
perfect.
yes.
Awesome. Does that help, Leah? Does that give you some ideas? Okay, great. Did you guys have any other questions? Because I peeked at the Facebook. I didn't see anything else come up. So no other questions? Well, hopefully you won't have to run into the aftermath of when baby decides they don't want to drink out of a bottle. But hopefully this gives you some ideas on introducing it early enough, but not too early so that you're creating nipple confusion. But once baby's latch is good, having that dozy little extra at night is going to help baby sleep longer. I mean, moms are going to love you for that just alone, but also it's going to make them more ready to accept a bottle and get used to accepting it and feeling like it's a good thing versus creating, all this trauma of like, mom's gone and now this object is being shoved in my mouth and I don't understand.